Hey, sir, how's it going?
What's going on, brother?
Awesome. Well, in the spirit of your podcast, I want this to be a conversation. As you can tell, probably from the stuff above me, I'm a child of the '80s, so I obviously grew up watching you.
My eyes went right to Stay Puft. Went right to Stay Puft.
There you go. Got Jaws up here. I've got Back to the Future over there. So yeah, you can see what generation I'm coming from.
I see it.
But I grew up watching you and listening to you because you were Sonic for all those early cartoons I listened to. I remember.
That's like the job that I didn't even want to take when I was a young kid. Seriously, that was like a straight up side hustle. And it's turned out to be this total legacy play. I used to drive to that recording studio in my mom's Acura Legend, or their four-door Acura Legend. And after work, and I'd be like, I want to go over here and do all these characters and be in this booth for freaking 2 hours after work. Because it was like I would do it after work, after I got off shooting Family Matters. So I was like, but again, you look back and I'm happy at my work ethic held up because people love Sonic like literally as much as they love any of the work that I've done in my career.
Absolutely. Well, I have two kids now, and once they're big into Sonic now, the current generation. But I went back and showed them some of the cartoons. The one we liked the most, because I didn't watch this the first time around. I've grown a little by then, but Sonic Underground. That was a great show. That was a really fun show. I love that one.
Sonic Underground is the one. It's the one.
I'm glad you recognize that too. I'm like, this is like you have some Game of Thrones plotting going on. It gets really elaborate. It's a good one. One. I know you weren't in the movie, but do you hope to be in like the sequel? Are you in talks to come back and do some voices for it?
Listen, I'm not even gonna lie. I definitely felt kicked in the balls by that, but and my fans let me know. But you try not to take that stuff quite as personal and you try to educate fans, and it's like as the property moves around from producer to producer or studio to studio, everybody wants to put their take on it, if they don't want to necessarily feel married to what already was. So, I should be about as pissed as about not being recast as Sonic as George Clooney or somebody should be angry about not being Batman still. It's a role to be shared. It's a role to be shared.
I'm just saying, if they don't bring you back as Knuckles or someone, though, there's a missed opportunity.
Listen, I'll throw my hat in the ring if you want to. I'd love to. Come on, who wouldn't want to be on screen with Jim Carrey? So if they could, hell yeah, bring me back as Knuckles or something. I'd love to be in the sequel if they found some room for me.
So I want to go, speaking of childhood, I was just looking over dates recently, and February 8th, 1991 jumped out. I was 12 years old, sitting in front of the TV, watching Family Matters, and that's the night that we got Do the Urkel. That premiered 30 years ago.
What year was that? What year was it?
This year. It's 30 years ago this year, February.
Wow. Yeah, February 8th, 1991.
Yep.
Holy smokes. Wow. That's scary, man. That's scary because you're talking about memories that are really fresh in my brain still. Like that's scary. Wow. The man who directed that episode too is not even with us any longer. And it's just like, again, time goes by really quickly, man. You gotta make the most of it every day. I hear about people constantly, 2020 sucked. I'm like, you know what? It restricted me, but I've actually had worse years. I am not going to claim 2020 as the absolute worst year. Let's go to the bank account. Let's look at everybody's health. Mom and dad are still alive. Matter of fact, they're super healthy, playing Monopoly with my daughter pretty much every other weekend. It's all relative. It's all relative.
Well, what do you remember about? Just doing that episode. You mentioned how fresh the memories are. Like doing Do the Urkel when you first read it. What was the process of making that dance a thing?
You didn't think anything of it back then because, wow, like that would just be totally corny to do as an episode now. But yeah, but because it was like you're suspending reality when you do an episode like that everybody at this party just jumps in sync to this dance, you know what I'm saying? You're right, with no prior practice, right? So it's like we just have a different way of storytelling now. But back then, man, we were honestly just listening to actual 90s cool kid music in between takes and dance battling each other in between takes and then getting back to doing the Urkel. So it was like, you know, there was a reality there. I think Lorenz Tate was in that episode, so there was always kind of like this, I don't know, playful middle school attitude when Lorenz was on set. You know, Sean Waldo hadn't quite become a regular yet. In that episode, he was still just, you know, Lorenz lackey as a bully. And yeah, I don't, it was just another episode to do and choreography to get down. Any long-term thought that we're going to have the whole country or kids doing this was, no, you just didn't think like that, dog. You didn't try. Oh, you know what? I wasted all those words to just simply say, in 1991, you didn't try to go viral. Got it? There you go.
There we go.
Right? In 1991, you just did something because you were told to do it, instructed to do it. It was either cool or people talked about it or they didn't. But you didn't try to go viral.
Right. You just moved on.
Right?
Did you have any say in what the dance would be, or like did you get to do any of the moves, or was it all choreographed for you?
Yeah, like may rest in peace, Gary Mentier. He was a former Broadway dancer. He was one of our rotation directors, and so he came up with the choreography. And Kelly just used to always make fun of him because he was such a wonderful gay Broadway man, and it was just like, not gonna make us do jazz hands, are you, Gary? Right? Right. So, like I said, we were just black kids giving a white dude a hard time while we learned that choreography. That's all it was. It wasn't that deep. It wasn't that deep.
And that episode, I was sort of tracking the 90s dance. That episode came out a few months after Do the Bartman. That had just dropped.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you're aging the shit out of me. Oh my gosh, the Bartman. Wow.
Do you know if that was a reaction to that? Like, did the writer say, oh, we've got to have our own version of Do the Bartman?
Again, the writers are not going to consult with 13-year-old stars of their shows. You know, I would read the script like anybody the night before, and you know, I don't know a lot of the motivations. Even when it comes to Did I Do That? I don't know how deliberate it was to create a catchphrase that would catch on to people, with people. If you'll even recall, the first thing that I ever said was in the first few episodes, I would knock over inanimate objects in tables and stuff like that. And I would turn to the inanimate object and I would say, excuse me. And so it started off as me just knocking over stuff and saying, excuse me, to the inanimate object. And at some point, did I do that? Just overtook that.
Just over there. And I noticed that the Carlton followed a year after you. So you were sort of in the middle there. Do you and Alfonso ever talk about the fact that you have these two signature dances?
Listen, I don't like earmuffs for all the people out there, but you are really a professor of you are a professor. You should be teaching a 90s nostalgia class at freaking UCLA, man. I had no realization until now that Alfonso ripped off my attempt to go viral back in 1991. You know, I've run into Alfonso. We get on well whenever we cross paths. I think we crossed paths a lot more back in the 90s because we would see each other NBA All-Star games all the time. But, you know, he has a great attitude about it. I got a great attitude about it. Everybody back then was trying to make somebody dance on camera, period.
Oh, I love that you bring up, did I do that? Because that's obviously a signature phrase of yours. And you talk about it in the Haley Joel Osment episode. You know, you were sort of comparing notes. Like
that was so great to have a conversation with. For the people who don't know what we're talking about, I have a podcast called Ever After. You can find it anywhere, literally anywhere where you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple. And I had a wonderful conversation with Haley Joel Osment of The Sixth Sense. I was very honored to talk to him because I just knew that we would connect on the catchphrase part of our conversation, because he's going to get a clown a day that comes up to him and says, hey, I see dead people. And I feel like the first person who's ever said this to you. How you doing today? It's Tuesday. You know, it's like, right. Yeah. And obviously I have, did I do that? So it made for a really, really fun conversation.
Right. And I like how you even worked it into your theme song, which is a great theme song. It feels very 90s. I love that.
All right, thank you.
Right. Yeah.
That was a very Jared crushed that theme song. My producer of my podcast is a guy named Jingle Jared, who writes the best jingles ever. And he was just inspired, literally like inspired by my podcast. Was like, wait a minute, just ran into the other room and came back with this song.
Great. Well, one of the things I really love about the podcast, listening to it, I love how real you get with all your guests about the business. So like when you talked with Keke Palmer about money and how money works, or when you talked with Everybody Hates Chris Kid about how agents and that stuff. Like it gets really serious and sort of provides some really amazing accounts of what's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about necessarily. It's just
man, particularly my business conversations with Tyler James Williams and Maya Bialik were two of my favorites. They really were. I really felt like they just opened up and were very candid. And, I thought that was so brave even of Maya. Maya was very candid. She was just like, everybody thought I had it made after Blossom. And it was like, I didn't have any money at all. And she even told me your salary. And I was just like, you didn't make 6 figures doing that show a week? It was like, and people didn't realize it. It was like, I'll cuss those producers out for you, those greedy bastards, it was like, it was just a classic situation of, poor representation and producers taking advantage of, unseasoned talent. Mm-hmm. But look at this now. She's got a new show on Fox, and, obviously Big Bang. Well, she more than made up for that 6 figures. Life is full circle, man, if you just do the right thing.
Right. Well, it seems like the mission statement of the podcast really is like, here is a generation of kids I knew or was aware of growing up, and we all turned out fine, because we always hear about the dark side of being a child star. So was that part of the motivation for you? This is how, you can grow up in this business.
100%. I've had to sit for any number of interviews where I just felt like the questions were just cliche. It was like, I almost want to turn an interview and be like, you didn't really prepare for this very much, did you? You just kind of had drinks with some friends last night and said, I'm talking to Urkel tomorrow. And they said, ooh, ask him if he hooked up with Laura. And I'm like, I wanted to have a conversation that felt like, it spoke to the connectivity between all of us. It's like, being even super candid with you right now, Melissa Joan Hart and I really weren't all that close. She was brought on to ABC to replace me. I didn't realize that as a corporate agenda, but because of that, we were kind of estranged, really. I really felt that my conversation with Melissa more or less made us friends. And it was just like, even though I'd already worked for her, and she was, she directed me in a film. Things were still very professional on that set. When we finally had that conversation, I remember her reps, they were like, it was like, Melissa has a heart out. It's 1 hour. And it was like, all right, cool. Man, I think we must have talked for like 2 hours on that thing. After a while, her husband and her children were barging in the room, like, Mom, what's going on? And it was just simply because I was finishing her sentences, she was finishing my sentences, and it was like, wow, the common denominator between the both of us was we both wanted to do it. One of Melissa's stories, my favorite was she said she was watching Romper Room when she was 4 years old, and the lady would say everybody's name, but she never said anyone named Melissa. And so she turned to her mom and was like, I want to be on that show. That is wild. Like, that's crazy that a 4-year-old would even have that ingenuity to say that I want to be on that show and I want that woman to say my name. And then you also happen to have a mother who's going to have the gumption to do something about it. Like, for those things to connect, that's serendipity, man. That's wild. It's destiny. It's awesome. And I love collecting those stories on Ever After and sharing them with people so they can see why we did turn out the way we turned out.
I don't know if you watched it over the summer, but there's a really great documentary that Alex Winter did called Showbiz Kids that sort of does some of the same stuff. The idea of like, here are some kids who grew up in the business, they had some difficult experiences, but they're still working. They still found, and I think it sort of helps counter that sort of obsession we have with child stars gone bad. That seems to be a collective pop culture obsession a lot of times.
Well, it's easy clickbait. Once something becomes easy clickbait, reporting a celebrity divorce, that's huge clickbait. oh, it's Kim and Kanye this week. Oh, clickbait, clickbait, clickbait. You know, you get everybody to click and read your article, and that's what matters these days. So, you know, it's just, you're gonna get a lot more clicks on you know, Miley Cyrus raking in. Miley Cyrus goes off a cliff than you are Miley Cyrus. You know, rakes in 60 million this year. It's like, oh, right, right.
It was interesting too. I mean, I know it was supposed to be a TV series originally. The Brian Austin Green episode, you sort of talk about that.
Yeah.
Will we ever see? Do you think we'll ever see it as a TV show at any point? Is the footage still there that you could do?
Listen, from your lips to God's ears. I know our producers are steadily in talks to bring it to screen, but COVID has just slowed down so many opportunities. You know, we were supposed to do. I always imagined it as a show that we would go to a restaurant, we would go to wineries, we would do things that you didn't even think we were interested in. I wanted to go race cars with Raven Simone. You know, I just know that's something that she likes to do. You know, so we turned it into a podcast as a temporary pivot. So hopefully we can get back to the show concept where you really get a chance to even see us in our elements, you know, doing things that you didn't think that we were interested in doing.
One of the cool details dropped in the Brian episode is that you both were part of like the pilot that became Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
What was that? What do you remember about shooting? Who did you play? What was the concept of the pilot when you signed up?
You know, I only remembered. Wow. I remember. I just have such vivid memories of an executive named Brandon Tartikoff, and he was a huge NBC executive. And if Brandon liked you, you worked on NBC. It's that simple. And I just remember auditioning for it. And there's just kind of a look that somebody gives you. It's like, back then at least, I'm going to pick you. Right. I remember getting that from Brandon Tartikoff. And it was a big set of rambunctious kids. Thank you so much. This is like, I'm going to look so Hollywood right now. This was just brought to me. I'm going to look so Hollywood right now. You know, it's just a big set with a bunch of rambunctious kids. You know, you don't really learn much in studio school that week when you get kids from all, you know, different grades and different schools coming together for, you know, 8 days to shoot a pilot. So that's all it was. That's all it was.
Just egging out. One aspect of both the Raven Simone episode and the Tyler episode that I really liked was you talked about the realities of growing up as a Black child actor in the business, which is very different than what a lot of white child actors face. And I wonder if that's something that when you talk to someone like Mayim or Melissa, if they can understand that as much in the same way you can when you're talking with Raven and Tyler.
Seriously, go listen to my episode with Mayim Bialik. Anybody watching this, because she brought the pain when it came to the honesty about the difference between being a white child actor and a Black child actor, particularly back then. You know, I've never leaned on that. And I haven't not leaned on it because it's not true. You know, it's just every man thinking their burden is the worst. And you know, it's fair of me now to definitely say it was very different being you were made to feel African American. Fred Savage was always invited to the Emmys. He was always treated like a darling during his time. I was never invited to the Emmys even to present. It was pretty much told to us I would be wasting my time to even submit myself for a nomination. And it was so normal, it was so normalized, you just shrugged. It was like, oh yeah, no, it's for the white kids. You know, that's what and you really, that was your attitude. You didn't even take it personal, you know. And then when a Black person would win anything, you know, I remember those moments clearly. They were never the Emmys, but at least on Oscar's side, you know, if Denzel would win or Halle would win or Whoopi would win, you know, it was like, those would pick up the phone and call the whole family moments. Yeah, they really were. So, you know, I always took tremendous pride in how many different people from all walks of life came up to me and recognized Family Matters. I was always really, really proud of that, because that showed a complete opposite of the way I was being treated by our television elite. So our television elite may have felt one way, but the real world said Indians, whites, New Jerseyans, whatever, Italians, Mexicans, huge Mexican following. They used to have to put a motorcade around my car during the Hollywood Christmas parade because of the attention I would get back then from the Hispanic community here in LA. And I'm proud of that. I'm really proud of that. And I even try to make sure I encourage African-American filmmakers today. It's like, no, don't forget, we want to tell Black stories, but we want to make these themes universal enough that our Black stories can resonate with other people, other cultures. So that's a place where I like to come, come from storytelling.
Right. And especially in terms of just growing up as a Black actor in Hollywood versus white actors. I mean, when as you're trying to move on to roles beyond what you are as a child star, do you face different challenges getting seen?
Yeah, people always want to make it about, typecasting or anything like that. That ain't it. Listen, when you listen to Mayim Bialik tell her story, you understand that there are many different biases. You can have a bigger nose than that girl. You can have you can be, judged by your weight, judged by your gender, judged by your age. It's a tough business, man, period, to just stay relevant. Very, very tough business. Even that word makes me cringe a little bit, the whole relevant thing, because it's like, every breath I take, I'm a little less relevant than I was 10 minutes ago. You know what I'm saying? That's just the nature of life. So it's hard to be discussed like a commodity like that. You know what I'm saying? It's moving up and down on somebody's, dated chart. But, I don't know. I feel like it's just my destiny to be in this business because my parents did nothing. We had no ties to this industry at all. So it's like, I feel like I'm in this business for a higher purpose, to connect with people on some level, to spread joy, to spread inspiration, to pave the way for my daughter. Those are feel like my purposes in the business though. But give it up to Mayim Bialik though, man, because she tells the truth about the differences between being white and Black though in the business back then.
Do you ever see yourself talking with someone who didn't have as positive an experience for your podcast? Someone who maybe, whose career sort of went in another direction, or is that not going to ever be part of your mission statement, do you think?
If it ever happened organically, I mean, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I root for people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I root for people. If Lindsay Lohan were to land some awesome role or something, or make a transition to directing or something like that. And, she came out with a project that said that she was just in a different headspace than partying. She would be owed an invitation almost to say, hey, would you grace us with your presence now? And, take us from, being tabloid girl to Greece. I guess you made a lot of money over there doing something in clubs. To how you found your way back to, getting in front of the camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where I speak respectfully about somebody's career. And, I only crossed paths with her a couple of times. So I'm not even talking about somebody that I speak to all day, but I'm like, hopefully, respect. Like, there's always going to be a place for you here in the industry if you want to jump up and grab that ring.
Well, even someone from your own past, I wonder if someone like Jamie Foxworth from Family Matters, that famously she left or was asked to leave midway through the show.
Yeah, but I would hold Jamie to the same standard. I'm like, my show is for people who have been working in the industry, not anyone who has just an Instagram. Right. Work. Let's talk about the work. Let's talk about the transition from job to job. A lot of times it's getting the job that's the work more than the job itself. So I would hold her to the same standard.
That's obviously a famous part of Family Matters lore is when Jamie left. I mean, looking back on that now, do you feel any sadness about how things went down, about how she...
Oh, no, I had nothing to do with that. I have nothing to do. I am as indifferent as Switzerland on that. I'm serious. I don't even bite my tongue. Tom Miller, may he rest in peace, famously fired people. Okay, they ain't putting that on me. Famously fired people. He fired Valerie Harper from her own show called Valerie. Okay, and renamed it the Hogan Family. And paint that parking space. And really, this guy was a producing thug. You know, we didn't have the internet back then, and you know, it was Tom's thinking that, you know, he could always pivot in casting. And you could, if you didn't have to answer to legions of fans in comments and whatnot, you could get away with that. You know, unfortunately, Jamie's mother and their family kind of asked for that in a lot of their behaviors, and you know, it became a running joke on the set. It was like, hey, Tom Miller gonna come down here. Tom Miller gonna come down here.
Yeah, it does seem like it got laid at your feet a little bit because, as you said, the show became very much more about Steve Urkel as it went on. And even though you weren't involved in it, it seemed like that was the way they tried to spin it in some ways.
No, I didn't fire Jamie. Like, I had bosses like anybody else, man. It was like, you just didn't do some of the things they were doing with Tom Miller.
Makes sense. Well, I even think like recently in the Fresh Prince reunion, we saw Will Smith and Janet Hubert finally make up after all these years. Do you think there's ever a chance where you could do a podcast again, make that an episode of Ever After, where you try to sit down and clear the air?
You know, I'm always down for something like that. You know, I'd love to have a conversation with Jamie, at least so she understood, you know, my point of view. Jamie and I's relationship were like, we were just two kids in a classroom who didn't really get along all that well. It's like it's that simple. Like, she was in the freaking 4th grade, I think it was. And I was in the 7th grade when the show started. You know, that's a big separation for you to be sharing a classroom. So eventually we were moved into separate classrooms. And, you know, but I don't have any, her sisters were actually probably more fun for me to interact with because they were older. But Jamie was just, to me, like this just sassy little girl who could never quite deliver a line as sassy as she was off camera. And that puzzled the hell out of me because I'm like, yo, I used to say even behind her back, I was just like, when she would have a line of dialogue, and I was just like, oh, and she blows the layup. And that was a running joke between me and Darius, because it was just like, no matter how you put the line in her mouth, she just couldn't, boom, deliver the joke. But off camera, hilarious. Just the most lippy little girl that you had to be on your toes with because she had jokes. So that was an interesting, you know, I always say that when it comes to acting, the big mistake a lot of actors make is they start acting. So it's like, soon somebody says action, all of a sudden their mannerisms change, everything's like, whoa, be natural. You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't come naturally to everybody. So, anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying I'd love to talk to Jamie Foxx in the future, Foxworth in the future, if it were made available. I think we'd have a good conversation. Actually.
Right, absolutely. Well, all the shows my generation, our generation, are obviously coming back now. Saved by the Bell is back. Funky Brewster's coming back. Are there plans for a Family Matters reboot? Would you be involved if they did it?
Well, you know, I have some things that I would love to do with the legacy. I think the safest place to start with would be you know, an adequate reunion. If one were to be arranged. So if they were able to pull that off, if you put up some kind of poll and maybe the fans wanted to see that, because that's really all it's about, then, you know, I will always want to make that clear. I'm not going to be a stick in the mud, guys. It's not me. I'm not the stick in the mud. They know how to reach me. All right. They know I'm not running from anybody. I love my legacy more than people even realize. And we have great, our stories behind the scenes are better than some of the ones that we told on camera.
If they were to make it with new characters, what do you think a modern day Urkel would look like? Because the thing for me is nowadays nerds are cool. So he couldn't be a nerd anymore.
I personally don't believe there's a modern day Urkel. I don't. That's like saying, is there a modern day Pee Wee Herman or a modern day Ed Grimley or, you know, I could, you know, what was it? Louis Skolnick from Revenge of the Nerds. What was that his character's name, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, those characters are almost, they just burned in time. And you said it, nerds are cool now. Nerds are almost Darth Vaderish now, if you consider Mark Zuckerberg's, image. It's. I don't want to see it explored for what it could be now. I would prefer see it explored for what it was in the 90s to give you a hint of what I would like to do. I think, I want to enjoy the nostalgia like anybody else. I want to go back and see backdrops with, Circuit City and Blockbuster tapes and VHS, and that's what I like to watch. I think, I'm enjoying the nostalgia right over your head right now, just as much as I'm enjoying this conversation. So that's the idea that I have, really, just to give you a little hint. But I don't think I wouldn't even put that on any modern kid to be Urkel Jr. 3.0. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. Those are some tough suspenders to have to put on and follow. I know the work that I did. This is a cantaloupe, by the way. It's a cantaloupe.
How do you think, I mean, one of the other interesting things, I mean, how would you think you'd handle the fact that Reginald VelJohnson played a cop in the original? I wonder if that's a very different occupation now. I have a hard time imagining how you do that.
Like I said, that's why if there's an opportunity to talk about doing something new, I know emphatically I have something that works. Family Matters, we tackled some good episodes back then about a lot of things that are going on now. I remember there was an episode where Eddie was harassed by the cops, and Carl confronted the guy because he was a peer. And I don't think we got enough credit for those types of episodes back then, but forget about credit. You know what credit I get? When a 9-year-old kid comes up to me today, wants to take my picture because they watched the episodes on Hulu. That's all the credit I need.
Nice. You've finished season 1 of the podcast. It seems. What do you have other episodes banked that we haven't heard yet? Who are some of the people you're hoping to get?
No, we just I shifted to a couple other projects, and hopefully we'll start a season 2 in February. I've got a list of people that I pursue, and I do it in an Airstream in this Brentwood mansion. It started off in a very Santa Monica driveway, but now it's a Brentwood mansion. We'll see. But I have a very auspicious list, and I hope I'm able to work down that list and chat with some cats.
Right, absolutely. What's been the most rewarding thing for you about doing this? Like, what have you learned about either yourself or just the business that you didn't know, just hearing from what other people say?
I almost feel like a bit of a journalist myself. I'm like, man, did I go the wrong direction in my career? Like, it's been very. I've been proud of some of the people I've been able to get to open up. I don't feel like I had a cliche conversation with anybody, and I almost challenge a journalist to have a better conversation with those people than the ones that I had. So I'm like, I'm really, really proud of that. You go into something not knowing what you're going to get when you have a conversation with somebody that you barely even know. I didn't know Tyler James, before. And, we had a mutual friend, and I could also tell he was a big guardian, and it's just something that comes with the business. Like, what do you want from me? Where are you going with this? Where are you taking this? And it's like, and you have to respect that. You have to absolutely respect that. And then you show people. It was like, even I discussed Bill Cosby with Raven, and it was like, Raven would shut me down quick. And I was like, Raven, it's me, Jay. Put your pistol away. I work with the man, you work with the man. I think you and I can have a contextual conversation about what he was to us and what he is now. And let that be that. And she was like, okay, Jay. And I was like, that was a moment that I was really proud of, because I knew if I went there too, I just know Raven, she was gonna put on those boxing gloves.
I thought you handled that very nicely with him, and also again in the Tyler episode you touch on Cosby a little too. It's a very complicated situation to wrestle with, and I like the way you are able to separate the what he achieved versus the person he was in that way.
You have to. I mean, the man had an impact on our careers, direct impact on my career at a few points that I don't even need to really get into. But you have no, this cancel culture is what it is, but you have to remember there's other lives involved. It's unfortunate that his show can't even really run on television with any regularity anymore, because there's a lot of other performances there. You know, I want to see Rudy, I want to see Theo, I want to see these other amazing characters too. So for one person to have enough power to cancel something, you know, that's something modern to get used to. That's sad.
Is that, I mean, are you ever concerned about old episodes of Family Matters getting canceled in that way? People finding things that you've done?
Yeah, if I go run around Central Park with my pants off or something, it's gonna get yanked. I have a lot of power. I have a lot of right? It's like, I could end those residuals tomorrow with one naked hang gliding with one.
When young actors talk to you now, what's the thing they're most concerned about, and come to you for advice for, or that you've been able to give them guidance on?
Ain't no young actors coming to me for advice. These kids today, man, these young, they got TikTok. They got 30 million followers on a 10 episode Netflix order. Like, this is, it's a different time, man. It's a very different time. You know, there's so many different platforms now. There's so many different qualifiers for popularity. You know, I come from the fan mail generation. It started off as a small envelope, and it went to a manila folder. Then it became a small box. Then it became boxes. Then it became too many boxes to even be sent to the set, and you had to send it to a service someplace. Yeah, I signed pictures 100 at a time. You know, I date myself sometimes. I tell people, I miss autographs. I miss autographs. I actually got to run, but I'll tell you, share a quick story. It was just to show you a blend of the old and the new. I was getting off a plane, and a kid couldn't have been any more than 10. And he came up to me and was like, can I take a picture with you? Can I take a selfie? I was like, yeah, man, cool. This kid goes, psh, will you sign it? He had already queued up the picture and brought it to the markup edit portion of the screen so that I could sign his screen. And I just felt so honored that he brought back autographs, first of all. And I was like, but he did it so fast and so smooth. I was like, oh, you dangerous. 10 years old is the way you think? I wanted to just box that kid up, man, and just take him apart and study him. But that was a really cool moment of the old meeting the new.
Right. And
that's probably my favorite autograph selfie I've taken in the last 2 or 3 years.
That's amazing. Oh my God. The kids today. What are they doing? Then you have to teach them do the Urkel. That's how you break that out.
Right? They can do that. They can get that from YouTube. We'll teach them how to properly ask for an autograph.
Right. Awesome. Well, I know you have to run. It's been a real pleasure chatting. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Doug, you are awesome. This was fun. Check out my podcast, Ever After. And who isn't a fan of Yahoo? Come on.
Awesome. Take care, sir.